Alright, so in this DBQ comment review video, we go over probably the thing that I have a reputation around school for. The whole idea that was is a dirty word. It's not necessarily, but we use it too often because was is going to be a symptom of a disease called the passive voice. And again, the passive voice isn't necessarily bad in other curriculum areas, but it is for history, and we'll explain why. Alright, so let's take a look at what is the passive voice. The passive voice is going to be a sentence form in which the action is given, there should be an N there, given to the thing that is being acted upon rather than the performer of that action. Alright, so that's a fancy sentence, but it essentially is saying that the action is given to somebody who's not really doing anything, who's having things that are happening to them, rather than the person or thing that is actually doing the action. Right, so the classic example is the man was eaten by the bear. Well, the man's actually not doing anything, but he's given the verb. The man was eaten by the bear. The bear seems to kind of not even really want to eat the man, but he's doing it anyway. So it's not the man was eaten by the bear. We need to give the bear its due and give it its own action. The bear ate the man. You see how more concise that is. We're not confused by anything. The bear is the one who's doing the eating, and it's much more active. It's also much more descriptive as well. One of the reasons why I don't like using the word was as much is that people will use it, students will use it every second sentence, and it gets very repetitive, it's very boring, and it doesn't really look well as far as collegiate writing goes. So we need to work on that. The reason why I focus on this so much is that when I was in college, it was the thing I got hit for in one class very, very badly with. All that red ink. Oh boy, a whole lot of red ink. But it made my writing so much better when my professor pointed that out to me to correct. And he was right. My writing got much better because it was more active, it was more engaging, it was concise, it was direct, it was to the point, and it left no confusion about who was doing what. So, it's not really that bad of a word. Was is useful. Sometimes sometimes you're thinking of a sentence and you're never going to be able to eliminate the word was. It has its place. It's actually good, a type of sentence constructive in creative writing, when you're trying to hide details, when you're trying to hide motives. So that is not necessarily a bad word. But for us, when we're in this classroom, we're trying to uncover those details and we're trying to convey the most important details to each other in our writing. So to do that, we can't leave things hidden, and the passive voice hides things. Right, so the purpose of the DBQ is to argue a specific point clearly and completely. If we overuse this passive voice, we're going to keep information hidden. And you have the example down here at the bottom. The active voice is, you stole the cookie from the cookie jar. And the second sentence means exactly the same thing, but we're hiding the actor. The cookie was stolen from the cookie jar. Well, who stole it? Well, in the first sentence, you know exactly who stole it. In the second one, that information is hidden. So if we're thinking about essays in history, when we're trying to think of causation and who did what to whom, it's really going to be an issue where we're going to want to be very clear on who did what and be able to convey that. So a good way to avoid it, in your writing, when you have your DBQ in front of you, you've got your rough draft, take a look at it and scan for was's, were's, and also is. Is going to be another issue because is also going to be present tense. And in history class, we will write in past tense. So is just the present tense of was. So look for those words, circle them. On your rough draft, circle them. I'm going to go through your first couple of DBQs. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to circle every was or were or see there. try to rewrite that sentence. Break that sentence out and see if you can rewrite it without using the word was. If you can, the sentence was passive, or more than likely passive, and now you've avoided it. If you can't, the sentence probably is not passive in its construction. You're just using was in a different situation. So that's the biggest tip I can give you to avoiding passive voice. Alright, why I'm going to grade you on this is college professors are going to expect you to be writing to be as refined as possible before you take their class. Alright, your first essay is going to be graded on expert level. They're not going to hold your hand and say, well, you should have learned this in high school. No, they don't play that. They don't have time for that. They are going to expect you to write at college standard freshman day one. Right? So a lot of them complain that college-bound high school graduates do not write as well as the previous generation. So they complain that when you get out of high school, you don't write as well as I did. I don't write as well as my mom did. My mom didn't write as well. She was the first of her family to go to college. It's the same thing, that we're losing a skill in conveying information. Somehow, we're losing that skill as we get into the college. So the less they have to correct your grammar, the more information they can help you dive into, which is the entirety of their career. It's the entirety of why you're in college in the first place. So this will kind of make that transition much easier. And like I mentioned, first college history paper I had, lots of red ink. The last history paper I wrote still has a good amount of red ink, but much less than before. Right, and how will I grade you on the passive voice? I'm going to circle every was, were, and is. I'm going to do much more of this in the beginning than I will at the end. By the end, I'm going to expect you to know to do that. I may write out to the side passive voice, but you should go back and be able to kind of pick those out. And it's going to depend on the length of your paper. If you use was or were 1 to 3 times, and it's not distracting from what you're actually saying, there's not going to be any reduction in your grade. It's only going to count off if it's distractive. If you're using it 3 or 4 times in one paragraph, that's when it becomes an issue, because it's muddling what you want to say. Right. So quick fixes. So let's take a look at some of these quick fixes. Right. If there had been a war or a battle that had killed off colonists, surely there would have been some proof within the territory, but White found none. This is one taken directly out of a paper from an AP student. Right? This is one of their first essays that they wrote, and they were not versed in passive voice. So this can hit all types of writers. Had been is the same as was. It's just a different form of was. So also take a look and see if you had beens in your writing. And it doesn't exactly say killed by whom. If you take this out of context and you don't know John White, and you don't know that these are Indians that they're talking about. These could be the Spanish, it could be the Germans, it could be aliens. Right? There has to be something there that allows us to know who were these guys supposed to be killed by. I mean, that seems to be like a big piece of information that we need to know. And this author has not given us that. The author knows that she's referring to, that she knows that she's referring to the Indians, but she's not giving it to her reader. She's not letting the reader know that. So let's take a look at how we can fix this one. Right. If natives in the area attacked the colony, John White would have found evidence of that attack, but he did not. Right. So the actor is present. The natives attacking the colony. They are acting in some way upon the colony. They are attacking it, and we know exactly who's attacking it because the natives is right there for us. So the actor is present. It gives a better indication of what the writer understands of all the things that they've studied. This puts it out on the paper and gives us a little bit more of a clue as to how well they have studied it and how well they understand it. which is going to be the entirety of what I'm doing. I'm trying to gauge if you've understood the material and how well you can convey that information and how well you can make an argument. All right, and let's take a look at another example. With all the ruckus this was causing, no one would question whether someone really felt afflicted or not. Excuse me, this comes from another DBQ on the Salem witch trials. This is another, I think, honors level student later in the year. Alright, so let's see if we can fix this one, because we got this word was. So we've already been clued in that we may need to take a look at this a little bit deeper and see if we can get rid of it. If we can get rid of it, we've saved ourselves a passive voice. So with all this ruckus this caused, with all the ruckus this was causing, with all the ruckus this caused, it's the same exact sentence, but all we've done is taken causing, put it in the past tense, then you don't have to worry about the was. With all the ruckus this caused, no one would question whether someone felt afflicted or not. Very easy fix. Just look for was, see if you can take the action verb and add ed to it instead of having ing, and get rid of the was, and you're good to go. Alright, so this was the last example I wanted to give you today in this video, but take back a look at your writing, because if you're looking at this, it's probably because I made a comment on your paper and you want to kind of fix it. So go back, take a look at your writing, see where that was is, and then try to see if you can fix it in some way, reform that sentence.